Welcome to the Jedi Ranger. I'm JohnBerry555, and it's time to take a look at probably the most controversial Star Wars film ever, or at least the most critically panned film by the Star Wars fandom. It was actually critically mixed by actual professional critics. Let's talk about Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. And the first thing we should address is, I'm not that harsh on this film because I understand they had some extreme challenges going into it. One, a rushed development due to a change in directors and all that, so that meant they didn't have as much time to actually tell the story that they wanted. Two, Carrie Fisher's passing meant that probably the role they really wanted to give her did not end up happening. And three, and probably the biggest one, Star Wars fans are insufferable, just like Star Trek fans. Both fandoms are very demanding and very critical of all new stuff, and that makes things really hard because you gotta appease fans, but you also gotta make sure it's accessible to the general audience, and the general audience will also like it, yada. All that to say, I'm a bit soft on this film, and the thing is, the film's not bad. It's not the worst thing ever. You know, you don't have the relationship between Anakin and Padme in Attack of the Clones, which is it supposed to be toxic or is it supposed to be lovely? It can't be both in the way they portrayed it. It can be both if they portrayed it differently. What I'm saying is that they tried to have it both ways and they failed. Here, you don't have that problem. Yes, okay, bit weird with Rey and Ben kissing at the end, but like, okay, whatever. High emotions, you know how things can get at times. But that actually brings up what I want to talk about first. Kylo Ren / Ben Solo's arc. As I understand, the original treatment for Episode 9, that entitled Duel of the Fates, was the idea that Ben was going to end up being full-on Kylo Ren, full-on in the dark side. That's not the way they went. They went with redemption for him. And I think maybe they could have planned it ever so slightly better, communicated it a little bit better, but I do like it because it is different than Anakin's. Anakin's redeemed because it's like, oh yeah, I shouldn't let the Emperor, shouldn't let the bad guy kill my son. Meanwhile, Ben was like always being tugged on the light side, always tugged to do the right thing. He was just basically being a rebellious teen, even though by this point in the story he's not a teen anymore. But that's still kind of what he is. He's lashing out. He's trying to live up to expectations, both light side and dark side expectations of him. And I think that causes a lot of his behavior, a lot of his stuff. Basically, he's basically being a Vader wannabe who does not really have it in his heart to actually be Vader or any dark sider. And that's why he could be redeemed. And why he could actually take action post-redemption to continue helping save the galaxy, making the right choices. Vader died to be redeemed. Same thing with Ben, but not quite the same. And with Ben's redemption, first, his mother reaches out to him in the Force, basically like, hey, I'm here, remember? And yes, that does give Rey the opportunity to stab him, but Rey also immediately heals him with the Force once she realizes what she's done. We'll talk about Rey's story in a moment. But by doing that, that's also showing him compassion too, that I don't think he thought he deserved. Both his mother reaching out to him and Rey healing him in that moment showed him compassion I don't think he thought he had deserved. But by experiencing that compassion, I think that helped cement his return to the light side. And then to visually communicate to us, the audience, but also in himself, the Force helped him resurrect his father's memory in his own mind, make it visual for all that. Han Solo is not really there. He's not. But his memory is there. No. When Ben says you're only a memory, Han responds, your memory. That is literally Ben's memory being manifested by the Force. That's how I interpret that scene. And in that moment, he makes the right choice to throw his lightsaber away instead of killing his father. He could have let that memory die. Remember, Kylo Ren did say, let the past die, kill it if you have to. And he could have killed that memory, but he didn't. He threw his lightsaber away. Yes, the memory vanishes, its physical manifestation, but it's still there. And then he goes eventually helps Rey confront Palpatine and then uses the Force to heal Rey. Which, by the way, did he think he could heal Rey, or was he just connecting with the Force and healed Rey by incident? Interesting question I just posed, and I don't have an answer to it. But I kind of wish we did get maybe some more lines from him. But let's actually talk about Rey's character arc and her struggles. Rey, throughout this film, is basically afraid of the power within her. She feels like, from the beginning of the film, she feels like she can't properly connect to the Force and connect to the Jedi in the Force, and that creates doubts for her. And then she has moments where basically her anger unleashes and gets the better of her. And the two most important scenes of that film impacting her character story is when she accidentally releases Force Lightning when she thinks Chewbacca had been captured by the First Order, and she thought because of that she accidentally killed him. And then when she basically in her fight with Kylo stabs him, which is also a moment of anger. But both of those things, she immediately recognizes she made a mistake. And then she goes on to make the same mistake Luke does in exiling herself. And this is actually where Rey's story and Luke's story intersect in terms of the overarching story. Rey basically decides to exile herself, not being able to trust herself, just like Luke did. Because Luke tells her, I was wrong. And that was Luke's story in The Last Jedi, was he made a mistake in exiling himself and basically letting the pressure get to him, for lack of a better term. And Rey did the same thing here. And Rey gets the pep talk that she needed. The truth that her grandfather is Palpatine. And Luke's thing is basically, it doesn't matter. You can be whoever you want to be. And I bring that up because when she grabs the Wayfinder out of the Death Star's remains, she's confronted with a vision where the dark side version herself tells her, do not fear who you are, something like that. It's not embrace who you really are, because if she embraced who she really was, the dark side wouldn't be a problem for her, because that's not who she is. The dark side is trying to twist her with a positive self-affirmation, when you think about it. But she does admit to Luke's Force Ghost that she is afraid of herself, and Luke gives her the advice, very valuable advice, that the destiny of any Jedi is confronting their fear. And her ultimate fear is confronting basically what she learned to be the worst possible thing she could about her legacy, her family, that she's descended from the space devil himself, Emperor Palpatine Darth Sidious. And by confronting him, she confronts the darkness within her, and just like Yoda said in Empire Strikes Back, she used the Force for defense, not for attack, and that's what defeats Palpatine once and for all. And yeah, she's reflecting Palpatine's own darkness back at him, or lightning in this case, but I mean, Rapari could be playing a role in it. Perhaps she might have picked it up somewhere. It's very possible. She did a lot of reading. There's 2 scenes of her looking through the ancient Jedi text, so she might have learned something here and there about Rapari. But basically the point is she's not using the Force to attack Palpatine. She's using the Force to defend herself from Palpatine, and Palpatine's own darkness backfires on him, defeating him once and for all. And that connects back with what Yoda said all the way in Empire Strikes Back. I said it before, but I'll say it again. A Jedi uses the Force for defense, never for attack. And that's how the dark side is finally defeated in this film. Of course, with that, we also should probably talk about Luke's little bit of a character arc here, where he basically imparts some advice to Rey, which I've already mentioned, and that's kind of minor stuff, just some good stuff reminding us who Luke is as a character and showing us that, yes, he learned what he needed to in The Last Jedi. And that's when he then, to cement that, he lifts up his X-Wing out of the waters on Act 2. He does what he said was impossible in The Empire Strikes Back, which, when I was watching that scene, I couldn't just help think, when Yoda says, and that is why you fail. Basically, in this moment, Luke believed in the Force. He had no doubts anymore. And yes, as the Force goes, he's now literally one with the Force, so of course that plays a role. But if we're ignoring the metaphysical aspect and looking at the character stuff, that scene is to show to us, the audience, that he finally has fully learned the lesson that Yoda was teaching him all the way back in the Empire to expect. Did we need to see it? Not necessarily. Was it good to see it? I think yes. I know, if I remember correctly, there was some discourse that it should have been Rey lifting it. And yes, I think that would have worked fine in the story. But because they wanted to give Luke a bit bigger role than I think they originally intended, they needed to do something to make that role communicate to us, the audience, something. And communicating to us, the audience, that Luke is one with the Force now, and that any doubts he used to have about the Force, about himself, are all gone. That was a great thing to communicate. And I think that worked out well for the story. Of course, speaking of Luke and all that, we need to talk about Leia and the fact that her role in the story was and is limited, and I don't believe that was the intention. I believe the intention was that they wanted this film to be the Leia spotlight film, because Han got spotlighted in The Force Awakens and Luke got spotlighted in The Last Jedi. But with Carrie Fisher's passing, they could not properly spotlight Leia in Episode 9. Now, I don't know how the original Episode 9 duo, the Fate script, would have handled it. And yes, I have read it. I don't think it would have been that well received. There's a lot of weird stuff. JoJo would have liked it, but I don't know if the general audiences would have liked it. But with that addressed, what they did, I think, to address Leia's character, I think, was as well done as they could have done it. For one, they made what limited footage they had left of Leia unused. They made, I think, pretty good use of that. Definitely they expanded Maz Kanata's role in the film to help impart some of the dialogue that they didn't have audio of Carrie Fisher saying. I also think, too, that Ben's redemption would have been very different. I don't think that Harrison Ford would have reappeared. I think it might have been Leia force projecting herself, and that's how she would have died. I think that was maybe the original intention, or what they might have done if Carrie Fisher had survived. Maybe not the original intention, because behind the scenes complications with scripts and directors and all that. But the point I really wanted to convey there is a lot of the stuff that I think that Maz, Luke, and Han told to Rey and Ben would have been told by Leia if Leia was able to be in the film like they intended. But I'm glad they did not do that much deep faking and all that. They had Carrie Fisher's daughter, Billy Lord, with a little bit of digital help to play a younger Princess Leia. That was perfectly fine there. I think they did a pretty good job in that regard. And like I said, that was minor. I think that worked out well. And the rest of the film, I think they handled it the best they could. And the last thing I want to address with that is I think it was smart of them to have Leia not pass into the Force until Ben passed into the Force, with both of them becoming one of the Force at the same time. I think that was very well done, and I think that was a great way of ending both of their characters. I also want to mention when she went to reach out to Ben, she had Han's medal in his hand that Maz later gave to Chewbacca. Now, Chewbacca getting a medal was in the original version of Episode 9 Duel of the Fates, but like a comic has showed, that Wookiees basically don't value medals the way humans do. And I feel like in the original script, it would have been too much like, you're getting a medal because you did something awesome. While here, I think it should have been handled a little bit better, but my view of it is more of, this is Han's medal, Leia would have wanted you to have it. And Chewbacca, and that would have meant something to Chewbacca, I think, because it's not his medal, it's Han's medal, his best friend's medal, and that would have meant something to Chewbacca. I kind of wish that's kind of what Maz Kanata said, because that would have, I think, conveyed why this medal would have actually meant something to Chewbacca, when all the other books that addressed it previously in the expanded universe stated that Wookiees don't value medals the same way. A totem of his best friend and his found family would have, I think, meant something to Chewbacca rather than a medal to his own bravery. Of course, with that said, we got a lot of other brave actions. The entire Resistance going, basically trying to take on the Final Order by themselves, with the only hope being if Lando and Chewie can rally support in the rest of the galaxy, which they do. And that's what I think is so great about all that, is because the Resistance, they're giving some people something to follow, some guidance. In the real life, if you know what's going on in the United States, you know it's a mess right now. We have a rise of authoritarian fascism, decline of civil liberties, just decline of our democratic institutions, and there just does not seem to be any meaningful resistance to that. And people are looking for leadership. I know Gavin Newsom has lately been making headlines with, basically mocking Trump's approach on social media, which, fine, it's probably needed, but it's not what I would personally be looking in leader. Honestly, my Governor Pritzker, I think, is doing better because, yeah, he's throwing jabs here and there, but he's also like, what can I do for the people of my state? That seems like a much better mentality. Have a record rather than just a social media train stuff. I'm just saying we could go into all that. But what it is that the Resistance, they're not, for lack of a better term, leaders. Poe does not feel like a leader, even though that is what he learned to be in The Last Jedi. Just because you learned how to be a leader does not mean you feel like you are a leader. You have, really, the only people who are natural leaders, for lack of a better term, left in the Resistance would have been Leia and Lando, really, because everyone else pretty much is dead. All the natural leaders of the previous generation that the average person in the galaxy would have looked up to as heroes to lead them. And the idea that these, even though everyone we see in the Resistance to us are heroes and leaders in their own right, they don't feel like that. But they feel like they have to give the galaxy hope, and they're in a position to do something, so they should. They are providing that inspiration, that hope for people in a galaxy beset by authoritarianism, tyranny, and fascism. That is what's going on in the galaxy, and the Resistance gives people hope for that. And basically by giving people hope, like, hey, we have a chance to strike back. And yes, in real life you won't have one clear-cut easy victory, but in Star Wars, because it's space fantasy or science fantasy, depending on which installment you're talking about, it can have that. You can have that one big victory, and that saves the galaxy. What's a beautiful cinematic thing is that after they defeat the Final Order's destroyers, guess what? Exegol is not dark and stormy and gloomy anymore. There's actually sunlight, starlight shining now. The curse of the dark side is being lifted, the curse of tyranny. Yes, maybe it's a bit corny in some ways to have, oh, you defeat the bad guy's empire totally falls, and nature starts returning. But the thing is, they did that actually in The Lion King as well. And while the instant may be a bit silly, such a thing can happen in real life. Wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone National Park, and within like a decade, if not shorter, the nature was healing from the lack of wolves. You can have those almost apparent magical things actually occur in real life. It just won't be as instant as we like to show in TV, films, and movies. Of course, there's a lot more stuff to discuss about this film. We can talk about that Finn wanted to tell Rey something, which I guarantee you, it was he wanted to tell Rey that he saw he was force sensitive. Every conversation after that, it kind of, except for the stuff with Poe, reinforces that. I don't know why he didn't tell Poe. Poe was basically acting like, Poe's acting jealous. He's afraid Finn's going to tell Rey that he loves Rey instead of that he loves him. Come on, Poe's totally jealous in that scene. That's what's going on with Poe there. all that. But it's clear Finn wanted to tell Rey that he believed he was connected to the Force, and the rest of Finn's story does confirm that. He just never tells Rey, and I kind of wish we did get that moment. And I do hope in wherever the next Star Wars film is going to be that's set after the sequel trilogy, that it establishes that Finn is training to be a Jedi. But one of the LEGO specials did have that, so at least we get that, so that does indicate that is their intention. Also, I'm pretty sure Poe might also be Force sensitive just because of the light speed skipping and all that. Yes, everyone yells at him for it, but to accomplish that, I feel like you would have needed to be connected to the Force. And speaking of Poe, first of all, the scene where he turns on the flashlight holding it like a lightsaber, that was for a comedic moment, and I think he knew what he was doing there too. Plus, I remember some people making fun of that, but name one Star Wars fan who hasn't pretended a flashlight is a lightsaber. Name one Star Wars fan. Oh yeah, I could name a couple, but they call flashlights torches, so name one Star Wars fan that hasn't used a torch as a lightsaber. Okay, should I go through every language and every variation of flashlight and torch so that way I can cover bases so people don't be pedantic about that? Probably not. I don't need to do that. But also, posing with the having done spice running, I kind of wish they said that basically he had like a rebellious year before he joined the New Republic, not that he left, because this film made it sound like he left the New Republic, became a spice runner for a little bit, then joined the Resistance. Personally, I would have rather, like, he had a year where he didn't know what he was doing and ended up spice running before he joined the New Republic, Starfighter Corps and all that, then joined the Resistance. I kind of wish that's how they communicated that. And I think that's what the expanded universe is going to go. But I don't mind that he did stuff like that. No, it's okay if that happened in his backstory. Just the timeline does not quite work out with what was established in the films. The expanded universe can make it work a little bit nicer and all that. But probably the biggest thing I do want to discuss is that Hux is the spy. Hux is a spy not because he believes in democracy or that, it's because he hates Kylo Ren. He was going to shoot Kylo to make sure Kylo couldn't take the First Order from him in The Last Jedi. But he didn't because Kylo woke up in fear and all that. And I think with the Legion General Pride showing up and basically becoming the new number one officer, Kylo's right-hand man for commanding the First Order, I think that brought out some insecurities in Hux. And let's also remember, in the expanded universe, in Legends, backstabbing was common in the Empire, in the Sith Empire during the Old Republic. Hux is just continuing that tradition. He's helping the good guys because he thinks that's going to make he can get revenge on his enemies, and he doesn't care what happens to the First Order at that point because he's so fueled by his anger and hatred of Kylo Ren. Literally, in Legends at the very least, Darth Bane basically orchestrated the defeat of the Sith because he was tired of them infighting and killing each other and preventing the Sith from being able to win. Darkseid MO from the get-go. Thousands of examples probably exist in across Legends and canon. Maybe not thousands, but a good handful. Totally believable that basically a spoiled, privileged general who was a spoiled, privileged kid would have ended up betraying his organization because of spite. I believe it. There's always infighting in any organization, whether authoritarian or democratic. There's always going to be infighting, but the Empire, because of this, how the Sith are in Legends and canon, always encourage a climbing over the top of each other mentality, fighting for dominance, and that's going to spread to the underlings who are not Sith. And that's what Hux is doing. He's just continuing that idea. But I do want to say, Pride, he saw right through Hux. And Pride is, I think, much more intimidating villain than Hux. Mainly because Pride does not seem ruled by his emotions. He's a Sith loyalist, for lack of a better term. Like, basically, he's the kind of person that the Sith want under their control. Someone who's, yes, has a lot of pride, but is also loyal and won't do something stupid to betray you. Which is actually quite surprising that he lasted so long and got to such a high rank. But I say that because I want to convey to you guys that just because it may seem silly on paper doesn't mean it can't work within the story. Plus also, I do like how basically all the characters are like, no way, what? We don't believe you. Pretty much, and yeah, Poe jokes like, yeah, I knew it. And Finn is like, no, you didn't. And that's fine in my opinion. It's okay for things like that to occur. But I do kind of wish more characters like, why was it Hux? And also Palpatine returning. I know lots of people have problems with it, but one, it happened in Legends with the Dark Empire comic, so it's nothing new under the sun there. And two, in the film, when Poe says basically, I don't know how Palpatine returned, somehow Palpatine returned, that's because he literally doesn't know. And then the person who has done research into the Sith and all that, who by the way, wrote an in-universe book that's now an out-of-universe book, which I still need to finish reading. But I'll talk about that at some point. I gotta finish it, but it's a good read anyhow. But anyhow, he literally goes over the possibilities, which all of it ended up being true. Cloning, dark science, secrets only the Sith knew, yada yada. But the point with that is that the Resistance does not know. They're not supposed to know. And the First Order and the Final Order, they're not going to question it. Palpatine is the boss. You know, they're not going to question it because they're his underlings. And Kylo, well, he doesn't care because, like, I'll use Palpatine as far as he's useful. And that literally was Kylo's plan until he got redeemed. Use Palpatine as long as he was useful. And with that said, I could have talked more about that, but basically I'm saying it's nothing new under the sun, and of course the Resistance doesn't know. But it was bad that the Palpatine's message was done in fortnight. No. Why did they do that? That was dumb and stupid. But now to address the final thing I would like to talk about. There's a lot more I could talk about the film, small moments here and there. I could have talked a lot more about Lando, and actually before I get to my final thoughts about that, let's actually talk about Lando. I think Lando was handled really well. I know the books and that have established that Lando was also looking for his daughter. That's why he joined Luke on the hunt for the Sith Wayfinder. It's all connected. Also with Rey's parents and all that. Who, by the way, Rey has some good parents. Read Shadows of the Sith covers that story a lot. But his scene at the end with Jaina, right? Yeah, I think so. Basically, it's not saying that she's his daughter. So while I don't think that scene establishes that Jaina is Lando's daughter, I do think it's showing that Jaina was in a similar situation to what happened to Lando's daughter. And that's going to create a bond for them. Also, can we please get the Calrissian Chronicles? I love the idea of have a present tense story where it's Billy D. Williams playing Lando, and then Lando and Jaina, they're going on an adventure, maybe trying to find Lando's daughter, Jaina's family, and helping other people who were conscripted as children to the First Order. Meanwhile, there's a past story that's going to be somehow connected, where Donald Glover was playing Lando, and we get that. Come on, please let's do that, Star Wars. It's been forever. Why haven't you done that? I think everyone would love that. Are you afraid because people did not really like the recasting of Han? No one complained about the recasting of Lando in Solo. Not to my knowledge. Please, get on that. But with that said, is The Rise of Skywalker the worst film? No. I still think that belongs to Attack the Clones. But is it the weakest film? Probably. It's definitely the weakest of the live-action saga films. It's definitely the weakest of the sequel trilogy, without a doubt. And actually, probably the worst of the sequel trilogy. But I don't think it's a bad film. I think it was a rushed film. The fact that it turned out as well as it did, despite all its rushed development, despite the fact that casting not really casting changes, but losing one of the main actors, last minute director changes. There's so much that was going against this film. The fact that it wasn't a total train wreck and dumpster fire, in my opinion, is a miracle. The fact that it has a mostly coherent story with some pretty interesting ideas that could very much be, and hopefully will be if they have not already, expanded upon in books and other stories, is a testament to what I think is the fact that it's not a bad film. It's just a controversial film. And it's controversial because Star Wars fans have very high standards. And so yeah, The Last Jedi is a decent film. Is it the best? No. Could it have been better? Definitely. But it's not a dumpster fire like so many people thought it was. I encourage you, rewatch the film if you haven't done so already, and try not to put on your expectations in that. That's what I did going into this, because you might find that it's better than you remembered. Is it going to be the best? No. Could it have been improved? Certainly. But that does not necessarily make it a bad film. It doesn't make it a great film either. I would say it's probably middle of the road or that. But the fact is that it's a solid, okay film. I wouldn't call it no Oscar worthy except for in sound design. Because Star Wars is always Oscar worthy in its sound and music. Star Wars has never gone wrong in that department. But what I really wanted to convey with that is that be kinder to it. Don't hate it as much. Hate leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Oh wait, I said it the other way around, but you know what I mean. Hating the film doesn't get you anything. It doesn't allow you to enjoy it. It just boils over. It makes you feel miserable. Finding what you love, finding what you enjoy is much better. And that's what I try to do with Star Wars. It's not what do I dislike about Star Wars, it's what do I like about it? What do I find interesting about it? And no, that is such a better mentality to go in. I believe it's the chain of cinema wins that famously says that every film has its lovers, or something to that sentiment. And I'm one of the lovers of the Rise of Skywalker. I love its little bit of a messiness. I love that it, had fun with the property. Yes, it could have been dark and serious, but it was dark. It was serious. But it also was hopeful. And I feel like the original Duel of the Fate script did not have that hope. At least that was how I felt after reading its leak. But with all that said, I want to hear your thoughts. The comment section is down below, so let's keep the discussion going. And I do mean a discussion. Please don't go into ad hominems and name callings and yada yada yada. Let's have an actual discussion about the merits of the film and what maybe it could have done better. And speaking of that, because I know we all would like to see it, next week is going to be my sequel trilogy review, of course. But either 1 or 2 weeks later, I'm going to put out a video where I am going to be giving you guys my take if I was in charge of the sequel trilogy. And you know what? I'm going to do the prequel trilogy as well. I'll lay the ground rules before I make those videos. I'll probably do prequels and sequels, and then do one where sequels based off the changes I made to the prequels. Something like that. I'll have an announcement video for that, and those videos will be made at least a day early to all channel members. But with that all said, I hope you stay tuned for that. If you have any thoughts on how you want me to present that series, let me know in the comment section. But do let me know what are your thoughts on the Rise of Skywalker. Let's keep the discussion going, and please, let's keep it civil. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give this video a like and share. Also, consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date on all my latest content. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the Force be with you, always.